The SuperMarvelSpider-Man back with another video. Today, we're back. Today, we're going to react to Evolution of James Bond 007 games. And, guys, comment down below if you're a James Bond fan. Anyways, guys, let's react. And, guys, after this, we're going to be reacting to Spider-Man brand new day trailer after this.
Of James Bond games. Before the first Bond games released, the movie franchise was already massive, earning around $1.5 billion, with countless successful movies like Goldfinger, Diamonds Are Forever, and Moonraker. So it's no wonder 007 jumped into games too. Bond's journey in games started all the way back in 1982 with Shaken But Not Stirred, a simple text adventure where players had to stop Dr. Death from blowing up London. Interestingly, it did not even have an official license to use the Bond name. The first official Bond game arrived in 1983 with James Bond 007, released on the Atari, ColecoVision, and Commodore 64.
Vintage.
Players drove through missions inspired by classic films like The Spy Who Loved Me and Diamonds Are Forever. It looked basic, but it showed that Bond could work as a game series. Bond games kept coming through the 80s. More text adventures, action games, and even a few odd film tie-ins. But none of them stood out.
There's a new
Many
one
were
coming
seen
out
as
which
cheap
really
movie
looks
spin-offs.
good.
But
I
that
think
would
I'm gonna
soon
get it.
change.
I need to get it.
Fun fact, the James Bond movies have earned an insane $7.8 billion in total.
And I swear this James Bond just carried Aston Martin. He made Aston Martin. James Bond just made Aston Martin look like the ultimate James Bond car. Like if you're an undercover spy or cop, Aston Martin is for you guys.
And them fifth among the highest grossing movie franchises
The
of all
MCU
time.
first, Star
Behind
Wars.
Marvel,
Damn.
Spider-Man, Star Wars, and The Wizarding World, most known for Harry Potter. And here's the wild part. Skyfall alone made over $1.1 billion worldwide.
Toyota
Right, how can I be getting a advert on the James Bond video?
Go with confidence.
Over $1.1 billion worldwide. In 1990, Delphine Software released Operation Stealth, later renamed The Stealth Affair. Funnily, at first it did not have the Bond license, so the main spy was given the name John Glames, even though the whole game clearly felt like 007. When the rights finally came through, the game was re-released as a Bond title, but some strange details stayed, like Bond being a CIA agent. Still, it stood out for its gameplay, detailed pixel art, and a much stronger focus on story than earlier Bond games. Shortly after, Bond stepped onto the NES with James Bond Jr. in 1991. It was not based on 007 himself, but on the animated show about his nephew. But the game played more like a light cartoon adventure than a real Bond mission. Meanwhile, on Sega systems, James Bond 007, The Duel, arrived in 1993, offering sharper visuals, more serious action, and boss fights against well-known villains. It was a step closer to the Bond fantasy, yet the series was still searching for the breakthrough that would finally define it. That breakthrough happened in 1997. Rare, the studio behind the Donkey Kong Country series, had been experimenting with a GoldenEye project. The game began as a small idea for the SNES, but as development continued, the team decided to push far beyond what the plan originally imagined. They rebuilt the concept into a full 3D shooter for the Nintendo 64, with open levels, smarter enemies, detailed environments, and a heavier focus on stealth. And here's the crazy part. The iconic GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64 was created by only 9 people, and 8 of them had never worked on a video game before. When GoldenEye 007 finally arrived, it did far more than follow the film. GoldenEye 007 revolutionized console shooters, influencing giants like Halo and Call of Duty. It introduced smoother controls on a controller, reloading, manual aiming, headshots, more tactical gunplay, and a mission structure that rewarded creativity instead of rushing forward. But the part that became legendary was its secret multiplayer mode. added during development without even being approved by Nintendo at first. 4 players could face each other in tight arenas, using weapons and characters from the Bond world, and this quickly became one of the most iconic multiplayer experiences of the decade. With over 8 million sales, GoldenEye did something no Bond game had ever done before. It became a masterpiece. It even earned an insane 96 on Metacritic. The game earned more than $250 million, which is wild considering it nearly matched the GoldenEye film's box office despite having just 3.3% of its budget. But more than that, it influenced major franchises, shaped how developers approached shooters on consoles, and set a new golden standard for Bond games. Fun fact, GoldenEye's legendary multiplayer was never planned. Developer Steve Ellis added it in the final month, quietly using the single-player code without telling his bosses or Nintendo. Nobody knew until it was done. A secret move that changed gaming forever. Following GoldenEye's success, Electronic Arts stepped in with high expectations. Their first major release, Tomorrow Never Dies in 1999, launched on the PlayStation and shifted to a third-person view, mixing skiing, shooting, and gadget use. But without multiplayer, it felt lighter and far less impactful than GoldenEye, a move that left fans shaken, not impressed. EA found stronger footing with The World Is Not Enough in 2000, especially the Nintendo 64 version. This edition returned to first-person action, added smoother gunplay, used stealth more naturally, and brought back multiplayer. PlayStation
James Bond may not be Batman, well, he still brings
players received a weaker adaptation without multiplayer, and it missed the mark completely. During the same period, EA tried making Bond's vehicles the highlight with...
See, I can see... I know some cars too. The film Figment Missile is just based on this. Just give me the
007
Figment
Racing.
Missile vibe.
It
Even though the
introduced
Figment
classic
Missile is
cars
just based
loaded
on
with
this.
gadgets, but the handling and visuals struggled to match the excitement of the
Got the
idea.
ZO.
With the arrival of the PlayStation 2, Bond stepped into a more polished and modern era. In 2001, Agent Under Fire marked Bond's first major step onto the PlayStation 2. It introduced a brand new Bond story, brighter visuals, smoother movement, and a mix of shooting, driving, and guided action scenes that kept the pace high. Gadgets were used more creatively, and the gameplay felt faster and cleaner than the older titles. But while the multiplayer was strong, its original story was forgettable. Even so, it became a success and sold nearly 5 million copies. It brought Bond into a new generation, but shooters like Halo and Medal of Honor had already raised the bar. Because of that, Agent Under Fire felt a little outdated next to the competition. A year later, Nightfire arrived and quickly became one of the most loved Bond games of that era. It delivered a cinematic Bond adventure filled with stealth infiltrations, snowy escapes, and stylish high-tech missions. Driving set pieces added excitement. Gadgets became more creative. Pierce Brosnan's likeness added authenticity, and the multiplayer mode became a favorite for many players. The PC release, however, was a very different story. It used another engine, cut several big moments, changed the mission structure, and felt far less polished. But the gaming world around Bond was changing fast. Call of Duty arrived in 2003, and it quickly became Bond's biggest rival. EA responded with Everything or Nothing in 2004. Instead of returning to first-person, they created a full third-person cinematic game that felt like a real Bond film. With Pierce Brosnan and many others involved, the game felt expensive and bold. The gameplay blended combat, stealth, gadgets, car chases, and bike escapes into one exciting adventure. Many fans still see this as EA's strongest Bond title. However, momentum faded with GoldenEye Rogue Agent, which confused fans by using the GoldenEye name without any connection to the classic film or the legendary N64 game. What were they thinking? And to make things worse, the game itself was not well received, earning a 61 on Metacritic due to weak gameplay and a messy plot. EA's final Bond project, From Russia with Love in 2005, featured Sean Connery returning to voice Bond, recreating the 1963 film with new action scenes. Players could fight enemies up close, use gadgets, and drive classic Bond vehicles, but the gameplay felt dated next to other action games at the time. Reviews were mixed, and sales were low, which made it clear to EA that the Bond license was no longer working for them. The game for Casino Royale was canceled after missing its deadline, and not long after, EA stepped away from licensed movie games entirely.
For Cancer Research UK,
It's just everything.
EA stepped away from licensed movie games entirely. When EA left, many fans worried that Bond games were finished, but then Activision stepped in, the same publisher behind Call of Duty, the biggest first-person shooter series in the world. That gave people hope. If anyone had the tools, technology, and studios to rebuild Bond, it was Activision. Their first game was Quantum of Solace in 2008, built on the Call of Duty 4 engine, which was cutting edge at the time. It mixed first-person shooting with a third-person cover system and followed both Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. But combining two movies into one made the story feel messy, and compared to Call of Duty 4, which was a huge hit, it failed to impress. Next came Bloodstone in 2010, an original story starring Daniel Craig. Bizarre Creations handled the game, and while the driving moments were better, the shooting felt weak, and the whole game came across as a generic shooter. Sales were low, and things got so bad that Bizarre Creations shut down entirely. Activision saw the downward trend and knew the series needed something big as a comeback, so they tried something bold, bringing GoldenEye back. The Wii version was rebuilt with modern controls, and Craig as Bond. Players loved the mission design and the motion controls. The HD remake, GoldenEye 007 Reloaded, later launched on PS3 and Xbox 360. Without the Wii controls, it felt more standard, but fans still liked seeing GoldenEye return. Ironically, a fan-made GoldenEye remake ended up receiving even more love. For Bond's 50th anniversary, Activision created 007 Legends in 2012, retelling 6 classic films with Daniel Craig. It sounded exciting, but the game felt rushed. The levels were weak, and critics called it a cheap Call of Duty clone.
A cheap Call of Duty
Just
clone.
45 on Metacritic, and is often considered the worst Bond game ever. Even Q could not save it. Soon after, Activision dropped the license, and Eurocom shut down. After Legends, the Bond series went silent. In 2016, a Lego Bond game was pitched, but rejected for being too mature for Lego. The trailer leaked, but the game never saw the light of day.
You have Jordan English, right? Mr. Bean's James Bond.
After 14 years, Bond is finally back. 007 First Light arrives on March 27, 2026 for Nintendo Switch 2, Windows, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S. This time we follow a young 26-year-old Bond on his first real mission. If he succeeds, he earns his license to kill. The game tells a fresh story not based on any movie. You meet younger versions of M, Q, and Miss Moneypenny, along with new characters who help shape Bond's early career. It keeps the Bond world familiar, but gives it a new beginning. First Light also brings back classic Bond style. In the trailer, you see a new Omega watch and the upcoming Aston Martin Valhalla, both upgraded with hidden tools designed by Q. And yes, the gadgets are back. The gameplay focuses on a smarter, more stealth-driven Bond, similar to the Hitman series. This gives fans a lot of hope that Bond is finally making a strong comeback. Fun fact, if First Light does well, the CEO of IO Interactive has said he would love to turn it into a full trilogy. That sounds promising, so let's hope for the best. And that is the full journey of James Bond games, from simple text adventures to GoldenEye shaping an entire genre, all the way to the return of 007 in First Light. If you enjoyed this...
Alright guys, now it's time to react to brand new day trailer. Right, let's go. Get your flipping hands off of her, mate. Ah, I know, bro. I know this is only fresh, but I'm gonna cry. Poster. This is taking me back. This is taking me back into that Spider-Man comment. That Spider-Man comment. That Spider-Man. This give me the vibes. This give me the vibes of sleep. This reminds me of when Spider-Man first appeared in 1962 Amazing Fantasy. Number